The annual extravaganza of stock car racing, the Daytona 500, has once again left the spectators breathless with an unparalleled display of high-speed, heart-throbbing action. This year's edition, however, etched its name in the record books as the most protracted running of the iconic race, spanning a colossal 212 laps. The adrenaline-fueled spectacle reached its climax in the final stage, culminating in a trio of catastrophic wrecks that left the race's outcome hanging in the balance. At one point, it appeared as though the indomitable Kyle Busch or the celebrated Brad Keselowski would emerge victorious, solidifying their positions as paragons of the sport. But fate had other plans, as Daniel Suarez's shattering crash forced the race into overtime, setting the stage for a riveting finale. Against all odds, the maverick Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the sole warrior of JTG Dougherty Racing in this year's Daytona 500 lineup, emerged triumphant, capturing the coveted checkered flag at the World Center of Racing on a bewitching Sunday night. In a nail-biting climax, Stenhouse outclassed the indomitable Joey Logano, sending the delirious crowd into raptures of ecstasy. Let's rewind it back to the second blue-green vacation duel qualifying race, where Kyle Busch had yet another brush with misfortune. The Mexican driver, Daniel Suarez, once again became the catalyst for Busch's fate, as the latter's number 8 Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet crashed into the outside retaining wall while leading on the Daytona International Speedway backstretch. Suarez's number 99 Chevrolet was the source of the unfortunate push that brought about Busch's demise, causing his race to end with 40 of 60 laps complete. Despite emerging from the crash unscathed, Busch expressed his frustration at being relegated to a backup car for the highly anticipated 65th running of the Daytona 500. With a palpable air of exasperation, he bemoaned the excessive pushing and shoving that seemed to be the norm during the race, despite the lack of pressure from the outside. The impact of Busch's crash reverberated through the field, with Noah Gragson, Ryan Preece, and Justin Haley diving into the grass to avoid his sliding Chevrolet. Unfortunately, Austin Hill wasn't so lucky, as the debris from the grassy infield found its way into his tires, causing his number 62 Chevrolet to spin out of control. The resulting collision with Travis Pastrana and Riley Herbst ended Hill's Daytona 500 aspirations, leaving him to rue his missed opportunity. As for Busch, he couldn't fathom the extent of the aggression and recklessness that permeated the race, especially in the midst of the second of 2 qualifying races on Thursday night. Despite the inside lane, with the 99 and the 5 behind him stopping the pushing and shoving, the outside disintegrated, leaving Busch perplexed and bewildered. The situation was made worse by the fact that Busch and his number 8 team believed they had a genuine chance of winning the Daytona 500 with their primary car, making the disappointment all the more acute. Although the car was in good condition, Busch acknowledged that the exit of the corners was a weak spot, where the other drivers could bunch up and make gains. Meanwhile, Travis Pastrana, the action sports icon driving the number 67 Toyota for 23XI Racing, suffered damage to his car, but remained optimistic that it was fixable before Sunday's race. Pastrana, who has never made a Cup Series start, was philosophical about the situation, acknowledging that the next-gen vehicle was unlike anything he'd driven before. Despite the challenges, he relished the experience and gained valuable information about what works and what doesn't in the highly competitive world of stock car racing. With an undimmed spirit, he expressed his eagerness to get back out there and make his mark in the Daytona 500. And the Daytona 500 finally arrived and was an absolute thriller. Brad Keselowski was leading the pack and looking poised to clinch a victory. With just 4 laps to go, Brad held the lead, having won the first stage and led a race-high 42 laps. But Busch made a spectacular pass on the outside to take the lead, with the help of Chris Buescher, who shielded him from the chasing pack. However, fate had other plans, as a caution was forced due to Suarez skidding off turn 4, creating an unfortunate interruption for Busch. This man just can't escape from Daniel Suarez. The race went into overtime, with Busch hoping to align with Austin Dillon and William Byron, but things quickly took a turn for the worst. Joey Logano led the charge on the outside, leaving Busch and Dillon vulnerable to a massive pileup in turn 3. Busch ended up in 4th place, and Keselowski in 6th. The night's final collision saw both drivers spinning around, with Busch expressing his disappointment, stating that he's used to crashing every year and just finding out which lap he'll come out of the care center. The race had a total of 3 major collisions in the final moments of the race. Keselowski was evaluated and released from the infield care center, while Busch finished in 19th place. It was a heart-wrenching end for both former Cup Series champions, who now hold a combined record of 0 for 32 in the Daytona 500. Despite their valiant efforts, luck simply wasn't on their side. Kyle Busch was beyond livid at the controversial end to the Daytona 500 on Sunday. In a heated interview outburst, Busch bitterly lamented how he would have been crowned the victor back in 1998, as there was no overtime rule then, and he couldn't hide his frustration at finishing 19th after getting embroiled in a crash during the second overtime. "I think this is the first time I led lap 200, so I wish it was 1998 rules. But no, it's just par for the course. Just used to it, and come down here every year just to find out when and where I'm gonna crash and what lap I'll come out of the care center," ranted Busch after the race, his emotions running high. Incredulous as the outcome, Busch even questioned who had actually emerged as the winner of the race, before being informed that it was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. who had come out on top. Busch's response? There you have it. Kyle Busch's constant bad luck and his hilarious outbursts during post-race interviews are pure comedy gold for his fans. While it might be a total bummer for Busch, there's no denying that his misfortunes generate a ton of attention and views. It's almost as if the universe has conspired against him by pitting him against Daniel Suarez and crushing his dreams of winning the Daytona 500. The saga began with Suarez causing a massive crash during the Blue-Green Vacation Duel qualifying race, which took out Busch's primary car and forced him to race with a backup vehicle in the big event. And if that wasn't enough, Suarez struck again during the season opener by wrecking Busch's chances of winning after he had taken the lead 4 laps before lap 200 and leading on it. It's like fate has decreed that these two are destined to be bitter rivals, with Suarez always being the reason for chaos, much to the amusement of the spectators. From the perspective of a devoted NASCAR fan, the 2023 Daytona 500 was an amazing race that exceeded all expectations. The Daytona 500, the annual season opener race of NASCAR, just made history by going the longest distance ever with a whopping 212 laps. It was a roller coaster ride of emotions for the drivers and even more so for the fans. A true endurance test for the drivers and one that demanded exceptional skill, strategy, and courage to endure. Amidst all the excitement, some drivers had a harder time than others. Kyle Busch, for instance, had a streak of misfortune that seemed to follow him for a while now. Despite leading the race at lap 200, Busch was ultimately undone by another crash caused by Suarez. He finished in 19th place, a bitter pill to swallow after coming so close to glory. But while Busch might have had his share of bad luck, he wasn't the only one. Brad Keselowski, who had been doing well throughout the race, was also involved in a major crash that effectively ended his chances of winning. But in the end, Ricky Stenhouse took the checkered flag and earned his first ever Daytona 500 win. As Busch might say, he lucked out. But hey, every winner needs a little bit of fate on their side, am I right? And Stenhouse definitely earned it, holding off none other than NASCAR champion Joey Logano for a thrilling finish. As for Kyle Busch, the elusive Daytona 500 victory has been taunting him for nearly 2 decades. But there's always next year. With this race behind us, it's time to gear up for the next big event, the Auto Club 400. Bring it on.